The Greek landing at Smyrna, modern-day Izmir, was a military operation by Greek forces starting on May 15, 1919, which involved landing troops in the city of Smyrna and surrounding areas. The Allied powers sanctioned and oversaw the planning of the operation and assisted by directing their forces to take over some key locations and moving warships to the Smyrna harbor. During the landing, a shot was fired on the Greek 138 Evzone Regiment and significant violence ensued with Greek troops and Greek citizens of Smyrna participating. The event became important for creating the 3-year-long Greek Occupation of Smyrna and was a major spark for the Greco-Turkish War, 1919–1922. At the end of World War I, 1914–1918, and with the Armistice of Mudros that ended the Ottoman front of World War I, the Allies began a series of peace talks focused on the partitioning of the Ottoman Empire. During Paris Peace Conference, 1919, the Italians landed and took over Antalya and began showing signs of moving troops towards Smyrna. When the Italians left the meeting in protest over other issues, British Prime Minister David Lloyd George and Greek Prime Minister Eleftherios Venizelos pushed a concocted report in the peace negotiations alleging that the Christian populations were under direct threat to convince France and the US to support a Greek takeover of the Aidin Vilayet centered in Smyrna. Borders and terms of the Greek occupation were not decided, but in early May 1919, the Allied powers supported Greek troops landing in Smyrna and moved a number of battleships into the area to prepare for the landing. Turkish reactions. The Society for the Defense of Ottoman Rights in Izmir, İzmir Müdafaa Hukuku Osmani, was organized to prepare for the arrival of Greek troops. Nureddin Pasha was appointed governor of the Aidin Vilayet and Aidin Area Command, Aidin Bölge Komutanlık, and supported activities of the Society for the Defense of Ottoman Rights in Izmir, but he resigned under pressure of the Allied powers. Ahmadizade Bey was appointed as new governor on March 11, and retired General Ali Nadir Pasha was appointed to the post of military commander on March 22, 1919. Allied fleet. In the early weeks of May 1919, Allied warships entered the area to prepare for the operation. British Admiral Somerset Gough Calthorpe was the primary commander for the operation, involving British, US, French, Italian, and Greek forces. On May 11, 1919, Rear Admiral Mark L. Bristol, the commander of US Naval Detachment in Turkish waters, came to Izmir from Istanbul on a battleship. The British forces would occupy Karaburun and use Unada. French forces would occupy Urla and Foça. Greek forces would occupy Yenikale Fortress. On May 14, 1919, the Greek mission in Smyrna read a statement announcing that Greek troops would be arriving the next day in the city. Smith reports that this news was received with great emotion by the Greek population of the city, while thousands of Turkish residents gathered in the hill that night, lighting fires and beating drums in protest. Later, translations of proclamations issued by the Turks during this occasion showed that the intention was purely pacific resistance. The same night, several hundred prisoners, mostly Turks, were released from a prison, with the complicity of the Ottoman authorities and Italian major in charge of the prison. Some of them purchased arms from a depot near the barracks. Greek occupation of Smyrna started on May 15, 1919, where thousands were gathered on the seafront, waving Greek flags on the docks where the Greek troops were expected to arrive. The Metropolitan of Smyrna, Chrysostomos of Smyrna, blessed the first troops as they arrived at 8 a.m. A colonel, who had neither the will nor the prestige to force himself relentlessly on his men, was in charge of the operation, and neither the appointed High Commissioner nor high-ranking military individuals were there for the landing, resulting in miscommunication and a breakdown of discipline. Most significantly, this resulted in the 138 Evzone Regiment landing north of where they were to take up their post. As a result, they had to march south, passing a large part of the Greek celebratory crowds and the Ottoman government konak and the barracks of Ottoman troops. Someone fired a shot. Smith indicates that no one knows who fired the shot, and chaos resulted, with the Greek troops firing multiple shots into the konak and the barracks. The Ottoman troops surrendered and the Greek regiment began marching them up the coast to a ship to serve as a temporary prison. Allied officers in the harbour reported seeing Greek troops bayoneting multiple Turkish prisoners during the march and then saw them thrown into the sea. Prisoners were forced to shout "Long live Venizelos" and "Long live Greece." Donald Whitall, a British citizen and one of the few neutral observers during the landing, remarked about the treatment of Turkish prisoners. They were made to go through no end of humiliation and received a good deal of knocking about. Whitall estimated that 30 unarmed prisoners were slaughtered. Most of the atrocities were committed by the Greek crowd and Greek soldiers, who could barely restrained from shooting the prisoners by their officers. The captain of the HMS Adventure reported that a Turkish officer, marching with his hands up, veer out of line. He was hit by a Greek soldier's rifle butt on the back of his head. When he tried to stand up, he was hit again and bayoneted, before the top of his head was blown off. Violence and disorder followed the landing, and Greek troops and Greek citizens of Smyrna participated in these actions. Some shops belonging to Jews were also plundered by Greek soldiers. For the days following the landing, Greek troops arbitrarily detained around 2,500 people. Looting of Turkish houses in the city and in the surrounding areas began on the night of May 15 and continued for many days after that. The Inter-Allied Commission of Inquiry reported that, on 15 and 16 May, countless acts of violence and looting targeted at the Turkish people and their homes took place in the town. Fezzes were stolen, preventing the Turks from leaving their homes. Many women were raped. Some people were murdered. The acts of violence and looting were committed for the most part by a mob of Greeks from the town, although it has been proven that soldiers also joined in and that the military authorities took no effective measures to stop the acts of violence and looting until it was too late. Admiral Calthorpe left the area on May 21 and on May 23. The Greek commander in the area went against orders developed by the Allies and Venizelos by ordering the expansion of military operations in Aidin and ensued. These operations initially did not face significant resistance, but ethnic violence erupted along the way, leading to significant violence and chaos, particularly in the Battle of Aidin from May 27 until June 27, 1919. In many areas, Greek forces demobilized the Ottoman police and then exited the area, resulting in Turkish mobs looting Greek property and killing Greek citizens. This was a retaliatory strike, as a result of atrocities committed by Greek soldiers and civilians in Smyrna and surroundings against Turks. When the atrocities were exposed and condemned by the British House of Commons on 26 June, Venizelos faced British diplomatic pressure to conduct an official inquiry. Court-martial in August 15, 1919, led by the Greek High Commissioner for the Violence on May 15 and May 16, pronounced 74 convictions, including 48 Greeks, 13 Turks, 12 Armenians and 1 Jew. According to the Inter-Allied Commission of Inquiry, the casualties on 15 May were as follows: Greek army, 2 killed, 6 wounded, 100 Greek civilians, 20 killed, 20 drowned, 6 wounded, 400 Turkish civilians killed or wounded. Eyewitnesses in Smyrna reported higher civilian casualties regarding the Turks. The U.S. naval officer of the USS Arizona, which was berthed at the Smyrna harbor, estimated 500 Turks killed with a total of 701,000 casualties. Regarding the Greek casualties, he estimated 2 killed and 20 wounded soldiers, 30 killed and 50 wounded civilians. Reverend McLaughlin, a Canadian in charge of the International College at Smyrna, estimated 600 Turks killed. Impacts. The Greek army from the first started showing the signs that they had not come for a temporary occupation but rather for a permanent annexation, to incorporate Western Anatolia to Greater Greece. It was already clear to some Turks where Greeks had occupied. Turkish reaction to these developments was instantaneous and violent. While there were big demonstrations against Allied forces in Istanbul, in Anatolia, first armed clash occurred on 28 May at Izmir between a small body of Turks and Greek army. Afterwards, Guerrilla warfare flared up along the line of Greek advance. The Greek landing at Smyrna created the Smyrna Zone that administered the area from 1919 until September 9, 1922. After the violence in May 1919, many of the Allies began to limit their support for the operation. France, the United States, and Italy all became resistant to permanent Greek occupation, and the Deadborn Treaty of Sèvres in 1920 gave administrative control of the area to Greece, while Turkey would retain sovereignty, with permanent sovereignty to be decided after 5 years. The Greek control of Smyrna ended when Turkish forces entered Izmir on September 9, 1922 and occupied the city.